Okay, continuing on with Chapter 11, Accessibility. I want to be clear, Chapter 11 applies A117.1. That's the American with Disabilities Act. To be clear, in federal facilities, it would be a different act. It's ABAAS. It's the Architectural Barrier Act and Accessibility Standard. However, in both cases, they point to A117.1. So technically, Chapter 11 does not apply to federal facilities. I don't think they're going to ask you that. I'm simply stating that. Now, I'm going to go through and show you the answers in the Commercial Building Inspector moving forward. Let's go ahead and take some time and go ahead and look at that. So keep in mind that buildings and facilities shall be constructed to be accessible. Accessible is italicized. If you go to Chapter 2, it has a very specific definition. It means it meets ADA, American with Disabilities Act. And so just picture somebody in a wheelchair or in a cane. That is what is going to be involved there with accessibility. Now look at construction sites. This might not be intuitive. This is actually a question and an answer from the test. Construction sites, to be clear, I don't want to get into the code interpretation. I'm looking to answer questions from the actual test, but construction sites, if you have like a construction trailer that's open to the public, it has to be accessible. But let's not go into the nuances of that. Simply look, the answer here was construction sites. I underlined what the answer was from the actual test question. Okay, let's not get caught up in that. Press boxes, do they have to be accessible? The answer is yes, if they're more than 500 square feet. 60% of all public entrances shall be accessible. So if you have two public entrances into a facility like a B occupancy, both would need to be accessible and meet the requirements of Chapter 11 and A117.1. You've probably seen, let's go through this. This is accessible parking spaces. This is defined in A117.1, but just keep in mind that these numbers apply in this question. I can't remember the exact question. It was like 450 parking spaces. Let's say something like that. How many needed to be accessible? The answer was 9. Accessible units. Let's see. So if I have a dwelling unit in like an R1, which would be a motel, this tells you how many have to be accessible, have to meet the requirements for an accessible dwelling unit. Toilet and bathing facilities, each toilet room and bathing room shall be accessible. So just quote that. So I'm not going to read them all, but just look at my highlights, highlighted. If I read them all, we'd be doing this for hours. So what this is, you have a high one and a low one for drinking fountains, and you can count. Just take a look at this. These deal with drinking fountains. A117.1 have specifics in terms of sizes and stuff like that, but this tells you the numbers that you need as far as that are accessible. So accessibility signs. Let's go. You had the. Okay, so what I did here is I identified the question. The question was, which of the list of 4 items is not considered required to be accessible or have signs? So you had accessible passenger loading, accessible toilets, accessible areas of refuge, and then the answer was exterior balconies. It was not in this list. So let's jump over to Chapter 12. So I don't want to get caught up too much into this. Just take a look at this. If you have a ventilated attic, remember 1 in 300 as a rule. That comes up a lot. So let's see, and then you can reduce that up here if you have ventilation. So just take a look at my notes, copy them, read them, that kind of thing. Let's continue here. Ventilation openings. What I'm doing is highlight whatever I have, underline the answer to the question, but I'm going through and I'm showing you what my notes are. That's mainly what I'm concentrating on. I'm only going to tell you if it's different. So natural ventilation, ventilation area required. So 1202.5, natural ventilation. So keep in mind, magic number is 8%. So that's the answer here. Openable is 4%. So 2 questions right there. Underfloor ventilation. So things like your crawl spaces and stuff like that. The number is 1 square foot for 150 square feet. Yeah, if you cover it, seal it per code, it reduces out down to 1 square foot of foundation openings to 1,500 square feet. Temperature control, this is important. Magic number 6 to 8 degrees above the floor, 3 feet above the floor. You need to know that. Natural light, 8%. Joining rooms, okay, so I had an answer here associated with adjoining rooms. Yards, let's see. So yards shall be not less than 3 feet for yards and courts. Minimum width. Interior space designs. So look here, this is interesting. Look at the definition of habitable spaces. It defines it as 7 feet. And what's important to know, that minimum dimension for habitable space, go to the definition of habitable spaces. Sometimes it's italicized, sometimes it's not. That'll throw you in the code. They've made mistakes here and there, but it doesn't apply to like non-habitable space, which would be like a bathroom or a hallway, that kind of thing. So it has a very specific definition. Habitable space, ceiling height, we've already expressed 7 feet 6 inches, but you can have a slope ceiling. Let's see, slope ceiling 5 feet. So you can actually have habitable space on a slope ceiling down to 5 feet. That's an answer there. Every dwelling shall not have less than 1 room. So every dwelling has to have 1 room at 120 square feet. And other habitable rooms, see, it's not italicized there. Isn't that interesting? Other habitable rooms shall have a net floor area of not less than 70. So if you have a bedroom, it has to be at least 70 square feet as an example here. So this gives you access to your crawl spaces, attics. It gives you the opening dimensions there. They will ask you this, guaranteed. You're going to have a question there on that. So toilet and bathroom, remember that 4 inches, 4 feet, and 6 feet, 72 inches there. For areas that are like, you know, impervious to, made of non-absorbent material, basically. So materials for exterior walls. They asked number 15 felt was an answer on something. I don't remember exactly what the question was, but it was that. For some reason, I struggled with this one. The answer was enamel paint. They gave a climate zone. So vapor retarder, I think it was a climate zone 3. Climate zone 3, vapor retarder class 3, but the answer was enamel paint. Anyway, look at my notes and it might help you a little bit. Minimum thickness of weather covering. So some difference, like what's the minimum thickness of aluminum siding? 0.019. You know, that kind of question. This is just simple lookup stuff. This one is a little bit more complex. I recall thinking about it. It was kind of hard to figure out. All right, class 3 vapor barrier. Foam plastic insulation sheathing with a perm rating of less than 1 is applied. I think the answer might have been, I underlined the answer, but it wasn't total. I can remember perm rating of 1 maybe. I don't remember details, but it was something like that. It had to do with class 3. All right, continuing on. Masonry, some weep holes required. Yeah, stone veneer can't be more than 10 inches. They'll ask you that. Yeah, just go through this. It gets kind of complex. It would take me a long time to explain this, but just read what I have there. If you highlight it, you're going to be better off and more successful in this test. So here you have a limit for exterior adhered masonry veneers, porcelain tile, 6 pounds per square foot was the answer. Corrosion veneers, metal veneers 0.0419, or vinyl siding 30 pounds per square foot. Let's see here, fasteners. Okay, this is where I found the specs on fasteners for vinyl siding, I think is what it was. 0.313 inch at 1 1/4 inch depth for your fasteners, corrosion resistant. That's where it is. Normally you'd look in the table for like, it has fastening schedule and stuff like that, but actually, in like chapter 16, but it's actually here for vinyl siding. That's where you're going to find the nail thickness, nails used to fasten siding. It's right here. Let's see, cold form fasteners and fasteners for cold form steel, light frame. So if you're like going into wood construction, it's that one. This is different for steel. Keep that in mind. Then there's your spacing for your screws and nails. Okay, roofs. Let's talk about roof. There's Class A, Class B, Class C, and unrated. You need to understand the rating, but let's take a look. Non-combustible requirements for gutters now. Flashing can't be less than 0.019 in thickness. Fire resistance parapet wall. Yeah, going back to chapter 7 on your parapet walls. Crickets and saddles. For some reason, yeah, this did come up. For some reason, I remember that. I had to think about that. I don't remember details, but anyway. The cricket and saddle, chimney, just remember 30 inches. Special purpose roof. Yeah, just look at that. I'm not going to take time to read it. Okay, underlayment application. Let's see. So just remember some stuff here. Asphalt shingles. You have to have a slope of about like 2 and 12 here. Okay, asphalt. Okay, yeah. So let's see. What was it? 2 layers of underlayment if you're between 2 and 12, and 4 and 12, and I think it was 1 if you're above that, something like that. Anyway, come up here, take a look at it. Fasteners for your roofing, 3/4 inch. Penetration. That's actually penetration. It's not the size of your nail. It's the penetration into your sheathing. 4 fasteners per strip and 2 fasteners per individual shingle. Important to know that for asphalt shingles. Drip edges, fasten not greater than 12 inches on center for your fasteners on drip edges. Yeah, so vinyl lining material, valley lining material gives you some information here for various stuff. So just keep that in mind. Keep in mind that's there. All the stuff I've highlighted is important. Everything else, you can look it up, but what I'm telling you is these are the answers. I'm giving you the answers. Number 26 for gauge, it comes up a lot. 0.019 is a minimum. You can't go less than number 26 on roofing stuff. Wood shingles and shake installation. Some serious changes on wildland fire associated with wood shakes. These are non-classified. However, you can have classified, Class A, B, C wood shingles, but they're like faux shingles. They're treated, so it's a little bit different. So just take a look at the stuff I have on that table. I'm not going to read it. This gives you, okay, so what was the question here? I'm trying to think. If you have an 18-inch shingle, the exposure, It had to be 5.5 inches. I don't remember the exact question, but just remember that's there. Okay, let's try to do this a little quicker. Rooftop structures, height above roof deck. So type 1 construction is non-combustible. Keep that in mind. There's some allowances for non-combustible structures having stuff above the roof. So it's 18 feet, 28 feet. Okay, 16 is an important chapter. It's big. You'll have a lot of questions on 16. Man, it would take me a while to figure this out, to explain this, but so just know that you have concentrated loads, uniform loads, offices, 50 PSF, a point load of 2,000 pounds. That's what that works out. Residential, it's 40 PSF. But remember, when I did the IRC, it's 30 PSF for habitable attics. That's what you're going to see in the, joist sizing, girder sizing tables, 30 and 40. But that's IRC. This is not IRC. This is not residential. Just remember that. Greenhouses always have to be 12 PSF. So you're designing, and let me just add something here. A lot of states, municipalities, they waive code requirements for greenhouses. Okay, but if they don't, then this applies. All right. So like in Idaho, the Idaho Administrative Policies Act says you can't require means of egress, stuff like that for ag buildings. Otherwise, you have to have a minimum of 12 PSF for your design, your engineering design of your greenhouse. Your different climate zones and seismic zones and wind loads, stuff like that are here, or wind and seismic, I guess. All right. Flood zones. All right, jump to 17. Special inspections. So special inspections, just to understand that special inspections are where you're going to have somebody coming in and that's specialized in something. So like there's certain requirements for pouring concrete. There's certain requirements for a special inspector with fireproofing structural members, stuff like that. There's a list of stuff that you have to do. Just look at 17, but let's just look. These are the questions from the test. So special inspection tests, owner and authorized agent, they always have to be approved by the building official, but you're authorized as the owner or authorized agent should employ an approved agency for the special inspections. So it's basically somebody that's independent, but the owner's going to hire them to go and basically watch concrete pouring and stuff like that. So let's look. The qualifications have to be approved by the building official. So this is going to go through some of the requirements. Special inspections shall not be required for footings as designed per table 1809.7. Inspect concrete placement for proper application techniques. It's a continuous special inspection. So there's periodic special inspections, continuous. If you're pouring above a certain threshold, what is it? It's like above 2,500 PSF, I think. Just ballparking, but you have to actually. And if it above a certain size and height, the special inspector has to be there watching the whole time, that kind of thing. So it's continuous. These are continuous special inspections. These are periodic special inspections. It gives you the requirements here. A lot of this ACI 318. We'll look at ACI 318 as part of this when I get done with IBC. Like I said, sprayed fire resistance material. You have to have a special inspection for that. Soils and foundations. Let's take a look at some stuff here. Piles. What was it? The answer is not temperature. I don't remember. It was 1, 2. What was 3? I don't remember 3. But so it was like what? Anyway, the point is, as far as piles, the answer ended up being temperature. So that's what it was there. Site grading. So excavation, grading, and fill, 2% away from structure, 1 unit and 2, and 20, I mean. It depends on what it is, but, okay, yeah, so this is, okay, I remember the question. So for the first 10 feet, you need 1 unit and 20, and then you have to slope the whole thing away 2%, okay? So it was like, what was the question? It was like, what is the height from the drain or the gutter drain from a structure 100 feet away or something like that? Then you had to calculate this. I don't remember the exact number, 6 inches, and then it was 2% the rest of the way. And then I had to come up with a number for that. But I think that's how I calculated that. So anyway, okay, continuing on, damp proofing. Keep in mind, waterproofing is always okay for damp proofing. Damp proofing is not okay for waterproofing. So they ask a question on this test, something like, they said, is these list of stuff for damp proofing? And what they had, a lot of it was nonsensical. But the one thing they did have was in the waterproofing section, which would apply to damp proofing. So that's what the answer ended up being. I don't remember the answer, but that's how I figured it out. Okay, presumptive load-bearing values for your soil. Yeah, so rubble stone foundation, you could actually still use them. You have to be at least 16 inches thick. Concrete cover, 3/4 inches, and outside faces is 1.5. Remember, I said earlier, always remember 3/4 inch if in doubt. But look, it's different if you're weathered, if you're on the outside of your face. And number 5 bars are smaller, so 5/8 and smaller is 1.5. This is going to be different with different sized rebar, and I'll get into that. But for this application, it made sense to go 1.5 for whatever that test question was. Okay, concrete foundation wall. What this does, this tells you that, let's see, design lateral load, 45 PSF for your load there. Maximum height's 9. Minimum unbalanced backfill is 8. You need number 5 at 37-inch centers, number 5 rebar for reinforcement. So this is for unbalanced backfill for concrete foundation walls, given the height, the thickness, and the rebar, okay? And if you, like PC here, see that? If you come down to the bottom, you can always find the definition. PC is plain concrete, means it's not reinforced. Which, it seems kind of counterintuitive. You know, we're in seismic categories D here. Back east, I've seen some foundations not reinforced, but out here, they all are reinforced. So it's just kind of different mindset depending on where you are. Plain masonry foundation walls gives you some specs there. Just to follow my highlights and underlining for the answer. Okay, over here. Foundation setback from descending slope surfaces. Just take a look at how you do this. 45 degrees is the magic number, and that's the distance. Well, it'll take me too long to figure out, but I remember it's 45 degrees times the distance away to find the distance away from the structure. So just take a look at that. I don't remember the exact answer to that question, but I'd have to think about it, explain it, and I don't have time. Step footings, 1 in 10. Just remember, if you're more than 1 in 10 for your slope, you have to have a step footing rather than a slope footing. So we're at a 6-foot frost level here, 5 foot. Some stuff has to be 6 foot, like fire mains, but generally speaking, we're 5 feet in my location, very cold location. But other places in the country that may not have a frost problem, even though you still have to have 12 inches below your undisturbed ground surface for your footing. So frost protection below the frost line of the locality. Dimensions, masonry unit footings, type M, type S mortar. Just know that, type M or type S. That was the answer. Let's see. Prescriptive footing supporting. Walls of light frame construction. Oh, widths of footings. Yeah, yeah, that's not good. Normally you're 16-inch, but yeah, 15 is what you can get away with for numbers of floors too. Yeah, man, I'm gonna stop talking so much because I'm wasting your time. Got to get through this. Let's see. Micropiles, grout shall be pumped through a tremie. Okay, the answer was tremie pipe. It had to do with water at the bottom. So I had to, the answer was water at the bottom. Grout shall be pumped through a tremie pipe extending to the bottom of the elements. That's how it was. Anyway, know that there. Durability requirements. Let's see here. 3,000 psi shall not be less than 3,000 psi if it's exposed to the weather. Let's see. Minimum slab size is 3.5 inches. That's going to come up, both IRC and IBC related tests. Masonry, let's take a look at this here. Okay, I had a note here, C 1404.4.2 for B, masonry control, masonry exterior, 10-inch weep. Anyway, okay, so let's take a look at what we have here. Lap splices. So lap splices are you're lapping your rebar, but there's a formula here. So not less than 12 inches. Okay, so the answer was 20 inches. They asked the length of the lap splice should not be less than 40 bar dimensions. So it was half-inch rebar. What's the lap? It was 20 inches. That's what the question was. Wall thickness. Plaster applied to adobe masonry should not be less than 7/8 inch thick and not greater than 2 inches. So, masonry fireplaces. Okay, had a few. Well, the IRC asked a lot more questions. Residential building inspector asked a lot more questions than commercial building inspector. But let's just take a look at this really quick. Trying to think, I'm going through this, see if there's any catches here, ouches, something that really stands out. I went through in more detail in the residential video I did, but so I'm not going to kill myself with this one. Just look at my highlights and read them, see where I've underlined, that kind of thing. This was interesting. For chimneys up to 40 inches wide, 4 number 4s. For chimneys greater than 4 inches wide, 2 additional number 4s for each additional 40 inches in width. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so strapping your seismic anchorage, it's not less than 4 floor joists you have to be strapped to with bolts. So just half-inch bolts. So it's pretty beefy what they're requiring there. So this is sizing of your vents, as I recall. Is it this? Let's see. Flue sizes. Yeah. So you had within the actual text, you had a size, but you could go here. I don't remember the exact. What was it? It was fireplace opening, and it was minimum cross-sectional area, and it was height measured. So you have height, cross-sectional opening, and the answer was 214 square inches for your actual round flue. I think that's what the answer was in this case. Okay, steel construction. Let's see. Had 2 questions. AISC 3. Okay, what was the question? It had something to do with AISC. So what is structural steel built to? It's AISC. It wasn't AISC 360. They gave a bunch of standards, names of standards, and the answer was AISC is what that was, I think. All right, non-structural members. And keep in mind, you can go back to the chapter on references. Take a look at this. So chapter 35 has all the reference standards, okay? So if you're asked what reference applies to such and such, open up chapter 35, go down to like the section and just read through which one is more applicable, because it's going to be really hard to remember where in the code these are. That'd be really tough to do. Load-bearing wall, that's a specific Chapter 2 definition at 100 pounds per foot. It came up here somewhere, I don't remember, but point was you need to know that. Wood structural panels are defined here. That's the standard, but once again, Chapter 35 could find it for you. Yeah, you'll have a lot of questions from this. Just keep in mind, what was it? Without edge support, what's the maximum spacing of 3216? I don't remember the specific. What was it? Half inch? I can't remember. I didn't highlight that. And then, you're on 16-inch centers for your supports. But then you could, span is permitted to be 24 inches on center where 3/4 inch wood strip flooring is installed at right angles to joists. So look at the footnote 2 on this. Okay. Yeah, so roof span. Yeah, I don't want to get too confused here. So the roof span, you have a certain type of panel size. You're on 28 inches without edge support for your span, but span is permitted to be 24 inches on center if you use something else. Anyway, yeah, there it is. That's what it was. It was 16 inches. That's what it came in. This is an answer. That's an answer. Had 2 questions there, possible questions based on people I talked to. Fastening schedule. I think earlier in this video I referenced chapter 16, not chapter 23. I think I was thinking of IRC, but this is where your panel. This is where the fastening schedule is. So this is how you're going to find the required periodicity and what type of fastener to use for stuff for sheathing. And remember, I mentioned that when I was in the vinyl, when I was talking about vinyl siding. Yeah, the vinyl siding had the .313 into wood sized screw or bolt. I mean nail. So this is fiberboard sheathing, joist, sill plate, etc., etc. So just take a look at the highlights I had there. Heavy timber construction. Minimum dimensions. So they've had a lot of changes. 2021 had a bunch of new changes from 2018 on heavy timber. And it'd be back in chapter 6, I think, for building types. But what I'm getting at is, I've built. Some of you guys have probably built timber frames. I built a timber frame. Timber frame construction for residents. This is different. That's different than heavy timber construction. So I had a lot of 4x6s on that, things like that. But take a look at this. Roof loads 4x6. Well, like I said, I used 4x6s, but the point is they have minimum sizes that you have to have if you're going to meet the requirements for heavy timber and not type 5B. So you'll be type 4, not type 5B. But I'm getting off. Just look at what my notes are. Let's not get into nuances. Clearance between wood siding and earth, 6 inches. That seems to come up a lot. Girder ends. Half-inch airspace in concrete walls. So you're setting your girder and you have to have half-inch space all around it. That's come up. Piers, untreated. Yeah. What was untreated wood is permitted? Okay, so get this. The question is wood in contact with the ground. You got to use durable wood, right? Naturally durable wood or, whatever, preservative treated wood. But get this, if you're constantly underwater, you can use untreated wood. And that kind of threw me. I remember that. That was interesting. Okay, seismic design category D and E, let's say 1 story. So structures, these are conventional light frame construction. Using the code, a lot of seismic zones, like let's say Utah, in a high seismic zone, they actually require everything to be stamped. That's how you're going to get away with multiple story buildings, as an example. But just take a look at this. Let's keep on going. So girder and joist and rafter sizings here. Floor joist span. So look at that, live load 40 PSF. Remember I mentioned before dwelling space is 30 PSF. This is your deflection, L over your deflection has to be 360. You have a few other things, but I don't want to get too caught up in all sorts of crazy stuff. But the point is, what this says is, let's say you have a dead load. So your dead load and live load. Dead load is your construction. Live load is everything but construction. Okay, so you're calculating a dead load of 20 PSF. The engineer would have spec'd it. You have number 1 Douglas fir larch. You can use 2x8s on if they're not more than 12 feet 4 inches long. Okay, that's how to read this table. Okay, lots of questions here. This is wood framing, so all your notches stuff that apply to residence applies to commercial as well. Okay, so just take a look at that. You know, I don't want to read all that, but very, very important to know if you're a framer. So this is just general stuff. Okay. And I did talk in a lot of detail in the 2-hour video I did on residential building inspector. So if you want to go look at that, give you more details. Always look at your footnote. I had a lot of stuff from footnote C on this, size and height and spacing of wood studs. So once again, more cutting and notching and stuff like that for your wall. Let's see, wall sheathing. Minimum thickness of wall sheathing. I'm trying to think if there's anything interesting up here. Stud spacing. Wall bracing requirements. So just take a look. Less than 25 was the answer. 25 feet for your lead-in bracing. Let's yeah, just take a look what I had there. Different configurations in terms of what you need. This is all for structural stability here, chapter 23. Okay, more exciting stuff on rafters, notches on rafters. Pretty much everything applies as it did in previous pages. So blocking, let's keep on going here. Okay, so this is your rafter tables. This is where you have snow load come into play. Let's see, what do you see here? Ceiling not attached to rafters. So keep in mind, ceiling not attached to rafters, there's your deflection, roof live load 20 PSF, dead load 10 PSF. And the answer was, when I came down here, Douglas Hemfer 13.8. So they'll give you the specs. They'll say roof live load of 20, etc. And I think, what was it? There's these ground, and then you have there's a minimum ground snow load that applies to everything. But otherwise, they'll spec out what it is. There's a ground snow load of 30 PSF. And then you could go do the same thing and figure it out. So let's just do this. So you want to be on 16-inch centers. You have a dead load of 20 psf. You have a ground snow load of 30 psf. The ceiling, in other words, the sheetrock is not attached to the rafters. You have a deflection of 180 L over delta. So you're allowed to have a span of 13.4 for your rafters. That's how you figure that out. The tables I highlighted were locations where you've had questions in the past. Okay, glass and glazing. Let's see. Louvered windows or jealousies. The answer, I can't remember the question, but the answers were which of these is not required or something like that, or not allowed. Anyway, it was tempered was the answer, but I don't remember why. I just can't remember the question. It's been too long. Likewise here, the answer was paper. Why was it paper? So these were so it was like, which of these is okay or not okay? Anyway, the answer was paper. Remember that. Okay, 15 degrees. This is different than residential. So what is vertical glass? Is glass slope 15 degrees or less from vertical, okay? So that's the definition. It is different than the residential code. 15 degrees comes up a lot. The answer was spandrel. I can't remember. I had light transmitting plastic, heat strengthened glass, fully tempered glass. The answer, spandrel glass did not apply, but I don't remember what it was. Fully tempered glass is the answer there. Okay, framing skylight set on an angle not less than 45 degrees. You have a 4-inch. You have to have a 4-inch, like, what do you call it? Lip curb. That's what it is. 4-inch curb for skylights. That does come up. So all this is just glazing. So requirements for, like, you have to have special tempered, like, safety glass in various locations. So that's all we're talking about here. A lot of this anyway, as far as safety glasses, different types of glass that required different stuff for safety, some heights. We haven't got to the heights yet, but glass and handrails and guardrails. Minimum thickness is a 1/4 inch. Okay, there you go. All right, so jump over to gypsum. Let's see. Let's see here. Shear wall construction. Just trying to think if anything pops out for gypsum. So something that's unique that you wouldn't know. Just highlight the stuff I've highlighted. There's your fasteners used. So periodicity for gypsum. I know there's a couple. If it's on ceiling, if it's on walls, so just, and if it's fire rated, there's all different numbers for your periodicity for fasteners. But just go through the stuff I've highlighted because that'll help you out a little bit, okay? Exterior plaster. Okay, plastering gypsum, 3 coats. I know that came up. Weep screed shall be placed not less than 4 inches above the earth or 2 inches above paved areas. Cement plaster shall be protected from freezing for a period of not less than 24 hours after set has occurred. Okay, jump over to plastic. Chapter 26. Basically, keep in mind you have to have a 1/2-inch thermal barrier, so gypsum, over a plastic insulation like plastic boards, unless it actually has like a ICC ESR or something saying it meets requirements. So that's really what it comes down to. Plastic veneer shall not be attached to the exterior wall to a height greater than 50 feet. So keep that in mind, like if you're doing an atrium or a high-rise or something. Okay, load transfer. Keep in mind, I mentioned this before, the difference between standby and emergency power. Emergency is 10 seconds. I think the question was, standby power, how long before it switches at 60 seconds? That just seems to be a common theme. You see that a lot, fire protection and building related stuff for whatever reason, for commercial end of things. All right, a lot of this is just a repeat of the IPC, but which I actually developed a quiz for that. I'll go through that sometime to help you out. Just keep in mind the number of bathrooms or water closets for women's different than men. For like an assembly occupancy type thing. Business occupancy, how many drinking fountains do you need? There it is there, 1 per 100 people. Can have a toilet in a food service room. Machine rooms, let's see here. Special construction, let's see, membrane structures. Yeah. This comes up with greenhouses occasionally. They'll design per Chapter 31 in terms of membrane construction, but you still have to make sure your uplift forces aren't going to cause the greenhouse to sail away. Let's see. Exit access travel distance. We already went through this. There's certain, yeah, so this would be applied to, like, picture a circus tent or something like that, okay? So you have some specs there for membrane structures. Encroachments on the public right-of-way. So you're allowed to have projections outside of your building into like a public way as long as it's above a certain height and has a certain, size of extension. Safeguards during construction. Your corridors have to be minimum of 4 feet. You have to have railings, protecting people, barriers, stuff like that. But I've underlined the answers, so just go through that. I'm not going to kill myself trying to redo everything there. Okay, so reference standards. Remember what I said about reference standards? Very handy chapter to have. Just kind of know what's here. You don't need to look up everything, but know that's there. So in other words, what I'm getting at is rather than knowing in the code itself where all the standards are or listings are, just know that this chapter 35 has all of them combined. So it's just easier to look up that way. Okay, let's see. I don't need that. Let's jump over here. So what I found is that, let's see, before I do that, I think I'm good. Make sure I got everything before I jump over. I think I did. Nope, I didn't. Okay. Got a couple things here I do have to go through this. So wall sign, if you have like a exterior wall sign, there's some specs there for bolts and heights for the sign. Okay, just be aware of that. A lot of times appendices don't apply, but most municipalities are going to invoke some of the appendices in IBC and other sections. Okay, now I want to show you something that's really helpful. As you go through all of that, I found it very helpful to just put some notes in the index. Generally speaking, the ICC index is not very good in comparison with like NFPA indices. So if I could find something, I just couldn't remember where the heck something is, I just would make some notes in the index, and that way I could always go to the index and find it. So I'm just sharing you what that was, if you're interested, so you can see what I put in there. Yeah, like notches. I never could remember where it was, so I put a section for notches there, which is about as generic and vanilla as you get in terms of construction. Everybody knows them, but sometimes I just can't remember exactly where it is. Okay, shakes, slope, 2%. I don't know why I needed to put that in, but there was something specific with a question from Chapter 18. So veneer stone, wood veneers, weep holes, wood offsets, and I'm done. There you go. There's IBC. Now I'll tell you what, let's just jump into ACI 318 really quick. I want to be able to do that. Let's get through this stuff. So like I said, I've used this book for both building plans, examiner, and for the commercial building inspector. So I'm showing you my notes from that. It's 2014 version, so the numbers don't line up. I'll be very clear, the numbers do not line up. So just be aware that, don't be confused by that, okay? But there's not a lot of stuff in here, so I just want to show you what I have. Okay, limits, F sub C. Let's see, your strength of your concrete. So generally, you can get away with 2,500 for plain concrete. That was the answer. And they ask, well, what is your compression strength in concrete? Based on, it's a 28-day test. That came up. Let's see here. Okay, air contents for concrete. So what's the purpose of air in concrete? It's to resist damage from cycles of freezing and thawing. That was the answer. Okay, fly ash. The provisions, okay, intended for, anyway, that's not the answer. Just points to 26422B. We'll get there. So concrete cover, I mentioned before, there's 3/4, 1/2. Now let's take a look at the other ones, 2 and 3. I said there were some different numbers here. So if you are exposed to weather and you are number 6 through 18, so remember what I said before, 5 and below is 1.5 inch of concrete cover, but 6 through 18 is 2 inch. Cast against, so if you're doing like a ground pour, like a, what do you call those? Why can't I think? A dirt form. If you're doing a dirt form, you have to have at least 3 inches of cover between your rebar and your soil, or you know, underneath, that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. You have to have spliced, welded if you're greater than number 11 R-bar, rebar. That came up. Let's see here. Specified concrete cover for cast in place. So cast in place pre-stressed concrete. Cast against, permanently in contact with ground, 3 inches of concrete cover. So that's the depth of concrete that separates the outside to your rebar. That's what we're looking at here. Okay. Okay, minimum for parallel non-stress reinforcement. Minimum distance between two number 6. Let's see, 1 inch. I'd have to think about that. I don't even remember what that was, but the answer was 1 inch. I don't remember what it was. It's been, I'd have to look more carefully at that. Just highlight that, read that. That's an answer for you. Okay, limits on cementous materials for concrete assignment. Fly ash. Okay, yeah. I don't remember the exact question, but how much fly ash? Maximum percent of total cementous materials by mass. You can't go over 25% fly ash, I think is what it was. Something like that. Okay, including maximum percentage of fly ash and exposure class F3. And then I have this table here. I think that, yeah, if you want to know what the classifications are, go to table 19311. That'll help with that. All right, over we go. Standing water shall be removed from place of deposit. Yeah, so if you're doing like a pier or something and there's water in the bottom, you can use a tremie to be able to fill it, okay? Otherwise, you got to have a PE to stamp it, whatever you're doing. So concrete shall be placed without segregation or loss of material. That was an answer. Compliance, concrete. Let's see, 50 degree Fahrenheit. Concrete has to be maintained at 50 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 7 days. So, and then here, high early strength is 50 degrees for 3 days. So there's two differences there. And then temperature for additional requirements. Concrete in cold weather. Detailed recommendations for cold weather are given in ACI 306R. Just remember it's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So your weather conditions, yeah, 32 degrees, got to keep it above it or cover it, that kind of thing. But the concrete itself has to be maintained at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Construction, contraction, isolation. I'm trying to think what this was. The question, the answer was compression because it's not in this list. I don't remember the question though, but there's your answers right there for it. Just look around, you can figure out what the question was. Be pretty straightforward. The answer was wetted, but why? ICC is different than ACI. Okay, when depositing new concrete, surface preparation including, oh yeah, so you got to wet it before you pour. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say, it says roughening, but you actually have to wet it. The answer is wetting. So if you're like pouring concrete on existing concrete, you have to wet it before you deposit new concrete. So that'll throw you, but the answer is actually wetted. Just make sure to read the stuff I'm highlighting. I just don't want to talk about it all the time. Okay, yeah, if it's non-pre-stressed reinforcement, you're allowed to have some rust and mill and stuff like that, mill scale on your rebar. But let's see, what was the other thing? Pre-stressing reinforcement shall be free of mill scale. So you got to actually brush it off if you're doing pre-stressed concrete. Okay, tolerances on concrete cover. So technically, remember we talked about like 3/4 and 1/2 inch and 2 inch and 3 inch for concrete cover. Just keep in mind that that you can actually go less than that based upon these tolerances. These are plus or minus tolerances to that requirement. So it'll definitely throw you, but if you're a little under, it's not a showstopper, okay? As far as your concrete cover to your rebar, just keep that in mind. Okay, what do you got? What is this? Strength test. Is this special inspections? I'd have to go look. Is that special inspections? I don't remember the, just read this. This is where it came up. These are for tests. If you're doing like a big building or something, you need tests, you know, like samples prepared for strength every 150 yards of concrete. And if you're less than 50 yards, strength tests are not required. Okay, so basically call up the concrete place and say, hey, yeah, give me some 3,000 pound, you know, whatever, 5 slump concrete mix. That's good enough. But if you're going above that, you're going to need to test every 150 yards. Some kind of test. Alrighty, let's see. Last one, I think. What is this? ASTM standard for reinforcing bars, nominal die. Yeah, yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, but this is where it is. If you have like, it's basically in 1/4 increment or 1/8 increments. If you have a number 5 bar, it's 5/8. Number 6 bar is 6/8 or 3/4, that kind of thing. I think that's it, guys. That's everything for, it wraps up Commercial Building Inspector from these guys. Like I said, ICC specs out the concrete manual. You don't need it. You really don't need it. I didn't need it. Some of the stuff in there that I'd highlighted probably is in the concrete manual, but like wetting, I talked about wetting. But don't worry about it. It's just these 2 books you really need. Just do the highlights I did, you're set. Anyway, so hey, thanks for going along with me. The point is, I think we got everything wrapped up. If you go through those 3-part series for Commercial Building Inspector, it's kind of a tough test. Don't get me wrong. It was a tough test. It's not trivial. But I think if you're prepped for what I went through there, commercial building, you'll be able to pass the building plans examiner as well as a commercial Building Inspector, if you need both. Not a lot of stuff different. I could probably show you my 2015 IBC, but I have highlights in there from that. But I'm not going to do that. There's not a lot. As long as you know the stuff we pointed out in Commercial Building Inspector, you should be fine on either test. Anyway, hey, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if this is of any value. It's kind of good for me just to go through the code. I figure if I'm going to do it, might as well just do a video to share with you. Anyway, hey, thanks. You have a good one. Let me know if you pass. Appreciate you watching this.